And we got a good one for you today.
I got a beef with you today.
You got beef for me today? I see that. Howdy folks, welcome back to Black Sheep Meadow. I'm Brent.
And I'm Amber.
And we got a good one for you today.
I got a beef with you today.
I see you got some beef with me. So we were finally able to pick up our steer for our beef for this year. To get everybody up to date. I think if y'all are new to the channel or just now tuning in or first time watching, myself or Amber and myself are attempting to produce 80% of all of our own food this year.
Without going to a grocery store.
Correct. And this has been several years in progress. You know, this is not our first year attempting, maybe not
on this scale. This is probably the 8th or so year that we've done beef this way, and we haven't bought beef in a grocery store since then. This is, if you guys have not looked into this in your area, this is something that I would highly recommend you look into. There are local meat processing plants out there, and you can go to them and you can buy a quarter of a steer or a half a steer or a whole one if you want, if you got the family for it and the freezer space for it. This is definitely an option, and it gets you out of that commercial meat processing that you see at the store, and it'll actually save you some money, and you're gonna be so much happier with the meat quality.
Correct. So our steer this year we're splitting with your parents. Yep.
And they have a small herd operation that she's kind of, between her and Dale, they've kind of grown. And a lot of the cows are actually bottle babies that she was given over time. And she's been able to grow her own little herd off of these bottle babies that, you know, didn't really have a great start to life. But now she has this beautiful herd that she gets to, we get to enjoy the bounty from.
So this steer was approximately, it was just shy of 1 year old, I believe. I think that's what Dale was telling us.
Just shy of a year old. And I've got some cost weight stuff for you. So I'm going to look at it. I got it written down so I don't tell you incorrectly. So its hanging weight, or its rail weight is what they call it, was about 628 pounds. So, and we got half of that. So we added 314 pounds to our freezer, which is great because you get things like this really pretty T-bone here and hamburger meat the way you want it as far as the fat content. You get to tell them all of this. You get to say you want your T-bones. You could tell them you want your T-bones 4 inches thick and they'll cut them for you.
Yep.
So that's great. So total weight was 1,570 pounds. I'm going to read my notes here. The current steer feeder price for our market, and this fluctuates weekly. Every time there's a sale, these prices fluctuate. So the current feeder price is ranging between $2.25 a pound and $2.50 a pound, depending on which yard I looked at to see. So if you take that per pound for our steer, plus the $460 to have it processed, per pound it was $3.95 for everything into the freezer. From
T-bones, ribeyes to hamburger meat.
And that is if you were to go buy a steer at a yard, like at a feedlot, and then have it processed, that's what it would run you. We're actually a little bit less than that because, like we said, my mom, this came from family. This came from another homestead. So our price to them was considerably less than what they're charging at the feedlot.
Correct.
So we actually are in less than that, but I wanted to give you guys some prices for what you should expect. And if you just went out and you didn't have a family that you were buying this from, if you were just going to a feedlot or going to a processing plant, this is about what you're going to spend. And you're going to get really good quality meat.
Which brings up another point. This has been a real big thing for me ever since we started this. But trade and work out with other homesteads. I mean, you have to be able to associate and deal with other people and trade. That's just the way it is.
Yeah. So it helps everybody. So that's always been really nice.
Obviously, if a half a steer lasts us 1 year, if we had a whole steer, it would last us maybe 2 years or just a little bit more, actually. And at that point in time, we wouldn't have fresh beef anymore. So yeah,
I don't really care for things to be in the freezer for that long. I'd rather refresh it within that year period anyway. So it works out really well. So if you get with a family that's like that, that's where you can really see the savings and saving going in half. If you have a large family, though, you might need to do this twice a year.
As well as, as far as the packing house, we could, if we had to, we could process larger animals here. We choose not to just simply because we don't have the proper facilities.
We don't have the proper facilities. And with beef, it's really nice to have them age hanging.
Yes.
So these animals are dispatched, and then they're cleaned, and then they hang for 14 days. So they're aging.
This one actually hung for 21. It was dispatched on May 23rd, and here we are, May 25th now. So
right. So, but it's up to there's some guidelines in that as for as long as they'll let processing houses do it. So your local one might not let them go that long. There's different guidelines, but minimum 14 days.
I think the longer the better. If you can get it to hang longer, let them hang it longer.
Definitely, the longer seems to be the better option. So, and then you get to choose. You could tell them you want your hamburger meat in 10-pound packages, and they'll do it.
Correct.
So there's a huge you could tell them you don't want any hamburger meat.
And I prefer that. I prefer that for us. We have our own meat grinder.
We do.
So throughout the year, I would rather a steak or something like a cutlet that we could turn into stew meat or leave it solid as much as we can, because if I need hamburger meat, I can take some of the less choice pieces that are still in the freezer at the end of the year and grind them up to hamburger meat.
And I'll tell you that when we process our meals in a jar, it doesn't matter what kind of steak we use, because the way it's being processed, it's pressure cooked. It's going to be tender. Yes. So you can use kind of those
tougher cuts,
lower end, tougher cuts of steak, or stew meat or chunks of meat, whatever we want to call it, chunked up roast. And then when you process that in your ready-made meals, it's going to be tender. So you don't have to use your good Pike Peak roast for your meals in a jar. So we prefer to ask for as many steaks as we can, because we will grind up hamburger meat as we need it through the year. So that's very friendly.
Yep. And I also like the idea with homegrown beef. In my mind, I tend to think it's probably a little less stressed.
It is. They're definitely not that herded through. So if you go to a feedlot or something of that nature, the animals are more put into a pack and it's more commercialized. It's just the honest truth. They're not mistreated, but they're definitely more commercialized. They're herded. There's, some stress on them in that way. When you go to a local processor like this, the animal comes in, the food and the water, and it's a very calm process. It's not this big. They're not doing, hundreds of animals at the same time. They're doing just a few at a time, and there's not that big,
Yeah, stress involved.
Stress, yeah.
Not to mention, I think commercialized meat obviously is treated with stuff like saline solutions.
Oh, yeah. You guys have seen the labels in the store where they're adding saline solution and for coloring, and
that's not the case. But we have better beef. I like the idea of knowing, so this being our 8th year, I like the idea of knowing how the animal's been finished out and how the final taste of the meat comes to be. We've really seen that with our chickens.
And that's really, if you enjoy that kind of thing and you like cooking, that's where you could really kind of play with it. You could be like, okay, well, this steer, we're not going to let it get to a year old. We're going to process it at 6 months, and we want to see how tender the meat is. We're going to feed it
grass,
just corn,
grass versus
like I was saying earlier, grass versus grain, or commercial feed in a bag versus whatever you choose. Like, the sky's the limit. You guys can make it whatever and see what your meat comes out like. And it won't be unedible. You'll still be able to eat it. You might learn a lesson of, we're not going to do that again.
Yep. So, but every bit of it gets put to use. We're just now finishing off last year's steer.
Yeah, we don't have very much. We planned this out very well.
Yeah, last year we actually, our last year's steer, we were very lucky with. We had came across a Wagyu Jersey mix.
Yes. And
going back into blending beef, that was a phenomenal animal to eat, because the Wagyu had the fat content. The Jersey had the richness of the flavor.
Yes.
So just little things like that we've learned. This particular steer was a Brangus.
Brangus, yes.
And, we'll see. We have not had any of it yet, but maybe what's for dinner
We will definitely have beef for dinner.
So,
but I spent the weekend just to show you. So processing stuff on the homestead, I canned how many?
I think you can 29 pints plus 3 quarts of tomato sauce.
And then we're starting to harvest watermelons.
Watermelons, yep. That one's going to go in the refrigerator, so we'll probably have that 4th of July.
Yay!
And I think this is actually our second watermelon. Now, as I mentioned before, we were talking 80% of all of our own food this year, and I've done some math calculations as far as weight, where we need to be for that. And we are through the big spring push of produce, and we're starting to get our beef in. We still got 2 more batches of chickens to process, and then we have some turkeys.
And we have the fall.
We have the fall garden, but I am seriously concerned about my weight for our final goal come December 31st.
So it's kind of an eye-opening thing. So when you see people on here that talk about them living and producing, some people will even go as far as claiming 100% of all of their own stuff or 80%. If you really start weighing and looking at it, the size of the gardens and the time that they're putting into it, the realisticness, there's some questions there because This is not as easy as people would like to make it seem.
I think the people that are claiming 90% are producing 90% of their own food, especially other homesteads on YouTube. I think they're probably not counting all those fast food restaurants that they're going to.
Well, I don't even know if it's fast food restaurants, but
any of the other food.
Yeah, it's going to be. There's just some questions because there's a lot, and you're not having full-time jobs.
Correct. And we've had a really remarkable year this year with the amount of rain that we had early this spring. And now up until the high temperatures, we're on day 20 plus of 100 and plus.
It's been very, very warm.
So
very warm. And everything's starting to show it. So it's very eye-opening when you hear people. So, people talk about, doomsday stuff and how, they've got seeds. Well, there's 90 days between now and germination. And if something happens...
Not 90 days between now and germination. 90 days and produce.
Yes, harvest, before you harvest. Yes, sorry. And depending on what time of the year it is, you're not going to plant something today and have something in 90 days to eat.
No.
It's just not going to happen. So being prepared and understanding where your food comes from and how it's produced is a big thing. And we're hoping to shine some light on that.
Yep. So we'll continue this process on. And like I said, we've got our beef for the year, which this is going to last us, like I said, about 12 to 14 months. And we've still got 2 batches of chickens, which we're experimenting with those. We've cut the protein way back versus our first batch.
Yep.
And the 3rd batch of chickens will be here in September.
And we have another half a hog.
We have another half a hog coming this spring. We're splitting with another homestead.
This fall, sorry.
This fall, not this spring. But we have another half a hog that we're splitting with another homestead this fall, which is, those are remarkable people that we have found. And then we have turkeys. And of course, yours truly got on the interwebs the other night and started banging around on the keyboard and said, yeah, let's order some more turkeys. So we have
more turkeys coming, guys.
Yeah.
Luckily, the coop is big enough to handle a few more turkeys, especially if we're kind of thinking that we've got more than just 2 toms in there. They're still a little young. I'm not going in there and looking up their skirts, but it seems like maybe we have more than 2. So we'll be processing more. And we really wanted turkey eggs. That was part of the goal, was to be able to, just like we have our chicken eggs, we wanted to be able to start regularly having turkey eggs. So we wanted a little flock of hens to produce turkey eggs. So hopefully this will all work out and it won't be too many turkeys.
So in the meantime, we want to encourage y'all, do whatever you can, provide for yourself, find ways to get away from the grocery store. I think today was our typical grocery store. We still have to go to the grocery store to pick up items every week.
And mostly it's dairy.
Dairy, some fruits, like you pick up some pineapple, stuff that we're just not going to grow in Central Texas.
Yeah.
But we encourage y'all to, get out, produce for yourselves. We've cut our grocery bill from...
drastically.
7-8 years ago, it was $150 a week, and this week it was kind of a high week actually this week, but it was $70.
Yeah, there was a couple things. There was a couple meal ideas that I had, and I needed a couple things that I don't produce here. So to do that, I needed to buy some ingredients that we don't normally buy, and that happens occasionally, but regularly the grocery bill is less than $40 a week.
Yep.
And And some weeks it's even a lot less than that.
Yeah. So we encourage y'all to do the same. Get off the system. Quit depending on the grocery store. My favorite term or my favorite wording is become ungovernable. Don't let anybody hold that thumb on you to where you have to slave to the system every week.
Yep.
So in the meantime, guys, if y'all like our channel, go ahead and subscribe. If you like today's video, leave a like. If you got any questions or comments, leave them down below. Myself or Amber always make sure to get back with you.
We definitely try to respond.
So in the meantime, we'll see y'all next week.
We'll see you next week.